Welcome to an electrical computer engineering session on technical electives and the AMP, which is the Accelerated Master's Program. I'm hoping that this will help you decide maybe how you might select your technical elective coursework. And in addition to your technical electives, if you are graduating in spring of 16 or December of 2016, you'll be wanting to take the capstone next calendar year. And that is a 2-semester sequence. I hope that comes as no surprise. It's only offered fall to spring. You can't start your capstone in the spring. So plan ahead. And some of your technical electives you'll want to plan ahead with also in terms of a sequence. There are some courses that actually depend on or make more sense maybe if you take one before the other, and some you have to take before the other. And so if you're waiting to take something in the spring, you may not have the option of taking that if you didn't take the prerequisite course in the fall. Let's then start by basically reminding ourselves what we have to pick from or how we might be organized. We've, in a sense, organized our discipline of electrical and computer engineering here into sort of 4 different pieces. We have a computer engineering component. We have, we'll call it an electronics bio piece. We have an electromagnetics and optics piece. And we have a signal and systems piece. Those are sort of the classifications or categorizations of the classes. For example, in computer, if you liked 175 or 275 or 274A or 372, whatever that letter needs to be after 372, if you liked those classes, you might think about picking some of your technical elective courses in the computer area. Even if you didn't like those, maybe you would benefit from taking some of the computer engineering options at the technical elective level. In the electronics and bio, sort of the feeder class for those would be 351C, if you're taking that now. In the electromagnetics and optics, whoops, is it 380? What am I doing? I'm trying to graduate it up to C, but I think it's 381A. Oh, that's why I got stuck on C. 351 was C, wasn't it? 351C, we ran out of letters, is why we have to put these consonants, and we need to change a class maybe. We used to have, I think, a 351A and a 351B. We had to go to 351C when we introduced a new sort of change. And in signals and systems, if you found 320A, which the precursor to that is 220, if you like the circuits type of work with the Laplace transforms, maybe some Fourier if you got that far in 320, and 340 you're doing introduction to communications. Those are some of the classes that would feed or naturally lead into the senior level courses that you now get to select from in your senior year for your technical electives. We've tried to organize these courses relative to the last 2 digits of the number, and we maybe had to change a little bit of that, but if you're looking for computer engineering classes, 175, 275, 274, 372, those all have the 70s associated with them in the tens units. So the computer engineering classes are in the 70s and the 60s. This isn't the songs you need to listen to for the computer sequence. But if you now have computer-related courses, you might be looking at courses in the 60s and 70s. What we've now decided, or what we're planning to teach in this particular set in the fall, is 369A, which is only available as a technical elective for the electrical engineering option. If you're in the computer engineering option, that's a required course. But this is computer organization, or you could sort of think of it as the precursor to a computer architecture class, but I think the title is computer organization. You could, if you're in the EE option and you wanted another software type class, you could take 373 and get a little bit more into object-oriented programming. Those aren't available if you're already in the computer engineering option, but they are available if you're in the electrical and you want to take some technical electives in the computer engineering area. You could also consider 411, and I'm going to put these 511s next to them. This is a dual numbered class, which means if you, we'll talk later about the Accelerated Master's program, but if you're interested in pursuing that, you would be taking the 500 level version of this class if you were using this class towards your master's degree and your BS degree. And we'll talk about your opportunity to double count courses. This is a numerical methods class or numerical modeling. And if I abbreviated signals and systems with an S and S, you could classify or categorize that as a signals and systems class also. It's simulation, it's trying to figure out numerical modeling. So don't discount that completely if I've now put it in the computer engineering area. If you say, I am definitely not taking any computer engineering electives, that's not necessarily what you should be saying necessarily. Another class that falls into that same classification or bin is a class that's called complexity. And now you learn how to deal with complex systems in terms of simulation and modeling. And that could also be a signals and systems type class. Another class that is planned is 462, 562. This is the computer architecture class. So that would follow immediately from 369A if you really are liking 369A now, or you have. Actually, you're not liking it now because it's not offered this semester. Is that true? It's only right now we're planning to offer it only in the fall. So don't think you'll, if you're an EE option, think, oh, I'll put that off until the spring. This is 369 is in the fall, as are all of these other classes that I'm listing now. Another class is computer graphics. And computer-aided design. How do you now manipulate or move things around if it's an object in the computer? How do you model that? How do you describe it? How do you do that effectively? Another class that is classified in the computer, and the reason, well, you're not going to see this many classes in all the other categories, but computer engineering is sort of like half of the degree program, so you'll see about half of the technical electives in this area, and the other half split between the other three categories that we've listed: electromagnetics, electronics, and signals and systems. And it really depends on the semester, fall and spring, which of those you might find more courses in. 478, 578 is dealing with computer networking. How do computers talk to one another? How do you set those networks up? How do you make that happen? That's ECE 478, 578. If you are interested in artificial intelligence and the logic and the thought process behind that, then 479, 579 would be a course that you might be interested in pursuing. And I may abbreviate that AI because we might actually talk about AI2 in a little bit, another class. Not this semester in the fall, but maybe in the spring. That's then what you could possibly take in the computer engineering category. If you were now interested in the electronics and maybe some bioengineering, now we are in the 50s in terms of course numbering. ECE 352, that's really only available if you're a computer engineering option because that's required. This is now device electronics. What's going on at the very basic level to make these electrical devices work. That's ECE 352, and maybe you want to know that or have a better feel for that as a computer engineer. You're going to take that as an electrical engineer in terms of the option. Another class in the electronics sequence, and this could have been listed maybe in the computer sequence, is 407, 507. This is digital VLSI system design, very large scale integrated systems is the VLSI, and that you might be interested in if you've liked the analog electronics. Now you can sort of combine those. Now you're doing digital electronics with very large scale integrated circuits. Another class in this category of classes is 415, 515, and I don't see this yet on listed. This is sort of a cross-listed class. It's shared with other departments, but this is dealing with the manufacturing of microelectronic devices. So this is microelectronic manufacturing and environmental issues. So if you're interested in sustainability, green, you might be interested in how you might make these particular devices in a manufacturing setting. Another class that's similar to that, so that one I'm not yet sure if it's being taught, so you might keep open to that. Another class is 446, 546, and the reason these are not in the 50s is because these are cross-listed classes. We had to share these with another department, and they didn't stick with our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s classification. So this 446 is a semiconductor processing class. We've covered the 60s and the 70s. We went back to the 50s with electronics and bio. Now let's move a little bit later in the decades with electromagnetics and optics. These roughly are in the 80s, We may go back into the 50s to do some that sort of are shared with electronics, for example. But here we have ECE 381, but that's only available to those that are in the computer engineering option, since this is electromagnetics. Maxwell's equations, if you always wanted to know what's the underlying theory behind all of this that everything is sort of based on, then you might want to take ECE 381A. ECE 434 is the electrical and optical properties of materials. You've always wondered how certain devices work, both electrical and optical. ECE 434 might be a good introduction to that. If you liked circuits and certain frequencies of circuits, then you might be interested in this Microwave Engineering 1 class, which is ECE 486, 586. This is now in the microwave frequency range, and it's the 1 because it's now dealing with passive circuits with microwave frequencies. And now, because it's in the 80s, you may have to remember your electromagnetics. What's going on with these Maxwell's equations, and how do we use those to analyze these circuits when we're dealing at these very small devices? The other one that I'm not yet sure on is 459, 559. This is now the fundamentals of optics for electrical engineers. This one I'm not yet sure if we have someone to teach that, but that's traditionally taught in the fall when it is offered. One more class or category of classes are signals and systems. This draws from the 20s, the 30s, and the 40s. And in the fall, it's not that filled with courses. There's ECE 430, 530. The 30s are the communications varieties, the 20s are the signal processing, and the 40s are the controls. So this is signals and systems. The 20s are signal processing, 30s are communications, and the 40s are control. ECE 430, 530 is optical communication systems. How do you build communication systems out of optics? Or what now theory do you use, or can you apply when you're dealing with this optical frequency range, or in these particular systems that are optically based? Another class in the signals and systems category is automatic control theory. This is really analog control systems. If you liked 320, then maybe you would find this interesting because it's dealing with Laplace transforms, transfer functions, state space representations. I don't know how much of this is making sense to you, but you learn that from the ground up in 441, 541. Now, while you are planning that in terms of your schedule, you will also need to consider how these classes might or might not conflict. So you need to memorize this. Yes, question? I don't know if we're going to offer that. That's why I didn't list it. So 304A might be available. We're hiring some new faculty, but I'm not sure how we're going to plug all of those in. Oh, that's right, 304A. Yeah, that needs to be in there. Yes, so that would sneak in. That's what happens when I start doing this on the fly, but that would be in the electronics and the bio. And I can actually cut my paper and paste it back together. Unfortunately, you can't do that maybe, but maybe depending on what you're taking your notes with. ECE 304A, that's the follow-on to 351C. The name of that, let me see if I have that. This is Design of Electronic Circuits. Now, if you wanted to build up, maybe instead of just a single stage of a semiconductor device, now how do you put these pieces together? You may have an input stage, an amplification stage, an output stage. How do you build all of those up with transistor-based circuits? And that's ECE 304A. Now, in doing that, I think I even removed it from here. But it's somewhere in here. You'll just have to look at the schedule of classes to find that when it is scheduled. But you'll see that this is fairly busy. But the idea is to try to distribute these so that you have the widest possible selection. Ideally, you would only see one number in each of these squares. But we can't do that. We have too many numbers to populate the time. But you can see that if you're a morning person, you'll definitely want to be taking that class, and you don't have to. That I'll be teaching that, so you may not want. So we'll erase that. But you can now go through, and I will make these notes available so you don't have to memorize this necessarily. Pardon? Yay! I didn't erase it. So it's at 3 o'clock. I should have known that. I taught right after that, not a 300 or 400 level class, but 304A is from 3 to 4, and I'm not sure if I've indicated when the labs are. The labs are distributed at various times throughout the day or throughout the week. But that's a 4-unit class. It has 3 units of lecture and 1 unit of lab. That's ECE 304A. Questions on this? That's the fall. The spring, I won't spend as much time writing things down. I've already tried to base this off of what is happening this semester. And we'll just quickly sort of scroll through this. In computer, if you're in an older catalog, I don't know when that's going to start being no longer even an option. You may be able, if you're an electrical engineering option, be able to take ECE 330A. That's computational techniques. And you may have that as an option. You may want to take agent-based simulation, which is 408-508. AI2 is this knowledge system engineering, which is 466-566. And 473-573 is an app class, if you're interested in designing apps for a particular device. That's 473. In the electronics bio, we have 417-517. Now, how do you actually design electronics that will measure bodily functions? Your pulse, maybe your oxygen level in your blood. How do you put those instruments together to allow you to acquire that signal information? in electromagnetics and optics. You have photo-solar energy. If you're interested in sort of power and energy, you could take this photovoltaic solar energy class, which is 414A. If you're interested in how antennas might be designed or put into different devices, 484 is a class you might be interested in. Again, this is planned for the spring semester, spring of 2016. Wow, time flies. And 488, 588, if you remember, 486 was a microwave circuit 1. Now 488, 588 is microwave circuit 2. This now gets into active devices. But you have to take 486, 586 to even have a chance of getting into 488. In the signals and systems, this is now in the spring, it goes digital. For whatever reason, most of the digital classes are offered in the spring. We have 429, which is digital signal processing. We have 435A, which is digital communications, which now depends on you having completed ECE 340A, which is introduction to communications. And then there's ECE 442, which is digital control. And like we did for the fall, you can see that in the spring, you could actually have a job on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, most of your day if you wanted to. These classes in the spring seem to be populated mostly on Tuesdays and Thursdays until you get later in the day, and in the spring I need to become a night person because now I'm teaching the last class of the day in the spring, or have in the past. But you can plan, and here you do have to be somewhat selective. You may not be able to take all of the ones that you're wanting to take. Again, this is a tentative spring 2016 schedule. That one won't sort of be put on the books until June, and you won't see it until probably October or November, what classes you might have available. Are there questions about technical electives that we've, yes? No, I didn't. ECE 422 hasn't been taught for a while. That's analog signal processing, and that particular class you could think of as sort of falling between the electronics and the signals and systems, but I don't think we're going to have anyone available to teach that. But whatever you learn in digital signal processing, like a 429, now how do you do multiplications, how do you do mathematical operations in analog circuitry? That's 422. And you are now playing a lot with op amps and how do you build these particular systems up for an analog processing environment. How do you modulate a signal? How do you build that in analog circuitry? No, I don't. So the question was, and I don't know if I repeated your question before, some people aren't here, so I'm trying to repeat the question if you're listening to this, and maybe you've already fallen asleep by now listening to this. But the question was 422, is that going to be offered? I can't say that it will, and that's analog circuit. Analog signal processing. Thank you for asking a question that I might actually know, but I can't answer it maybe in the way that you wanted. Other questions about, maybe you're all here for the second piece of this, sure. So that would be 450. So the question or the statement by Marissa was, if you run into difficulties registering for a class, it may be because that class is housed or its home is another department. You could sort of think of that as the instructor is probably more likely to come from a different department. Some of those are 415. Another one is 446, semiconductor processing. Another one might be 417, 517. What was the other one? Oh, 430, 530 that was mentioned, optical communications. That's taught out of usually by an instructor from optical sciences. Yes. The calendar or the weekly schedule. I'll try to post this. So what I'm planning to do, the question was, is the schedule going to be available? Why don't I say that if you look at that, I'll give you a link to the material that I've written down here, and some of that will be so it's basically the ECE website at my homepage, Tilde Tharp. That answer your question? So that will give you then the different schedules, weekly schedules for the fall and the spring. You actually have those implicitly in the schedule of classes, but this sometimes is a little easier maybe to highlight that if you're thinking about how you're going to plan your semester. Other questions? Yes. So what does it mean if it's a 400/500 class? That means that you are now mixed with graduate students. 400 is reserved, let's say, for senior level coursework. 500 is graduate level coursework. This allows us to touch more students by having these dual numbered courses. So the question was, what's up with this 400/500? And the reason why I listed these 400/500 in the way that I did is because of this piece of the discussion that I'm going to talk about now, which is the Accelerated Master's Program. This is a way for you to actually, depending on your schedule, let's say that you've completed your undergraduate program in 4 years, you can now finish a master's degree in 1 more year if you plan ahead. So during your junior year, once you have 75 units, you can start applying to the Accelerated Master's Program. You can't start taking classes until you are officially a senior by units, and that's if you have 90 plus units. Is that right, Marissa? So you need to be senior status. That has to be in effect in order to take these 500 level courses that you would take the 500 level version of these 400/500 so that you could now count that course both towards your bachelor's degree and your master's degree. If you went for a master's degree without a thesis, that consists of 10 classes. In this particular Accelerated Master's Program, you can actually count 4 classes towards both degrees. And you need to meet these particular requirements. You need to be a junior or senior. You have to, in order to take the 500, you have to be having 90 plus units. You need a 3.3 cumulative undergrad GPA, but we do waive the GRE requirement, which cuts you some slack. Now you don't have to pay the $70 or whatever the fee is to take the GRE. And you need to obviously be ready to pursue this material at the 500 level. Typically what that means, there is a distinction between 400 and 500. 500 you have to do a little bit more for that particular class. And a little bit more, what does that mean? That might mean there's additional problems. That might mean there's a project involved that the 400 level students don't have to pursue. There may be more challenging problems on an exam or exams. It depends on the instructor. But that's what distinguishes 400 from 500. If you meet those admission requirements, then you would submit your application to the graduate college, and then you would be allowed to actually count 4 classes both towards your bachelor's degree and your master's degree, which means when you finish your bachelor's degree, if you do 4 of those, now you have 6 graduate level classes that you could maybe take 3 in the fall, 3 in the spring, and you've now completed your master's degree after 5 years in the program. We're looking at, I'm recording this, I need to be careful what I say, but we're thinking of maybe giving you a financial benefit, meaning maybe you lower your tuition a little bit if you're in our program and you're a high achiever, meaning you maybe have a really high GPA. We may actually give you a cut on your tuition, but stay tuned for that if you get into the A&P, which means it may not cost you as much even to spend that 1 year for tuition. It'll cost you some, but it may be discounted a little bit if you're one of our own. So we may teach you or treat you preferentially if you get into the A&P when you're pursuing your master's coursework. And that's maybe all I better say. That's still up in the air. Did I give you enough information on the A&P? Do you have a feel for what that is? Yes. So the A&P, do we have to complete a thesis? You have the option. You can do a master's with a thesis. You could do a master's without a thesis. If you do a master's with a thesis, then 6 of those units would be your master's. Well, you wouldn't even have as many courses, but typically when you're pursuing a thesis, the research consumes a little bit more time, and you're not just only focused on coursework, and you may have to take longer than a year to complete your master's with a thesis. Sometimes the research, it's research, so you don't know how that's going to pan out or where that's going to take you, so there's a little bit more uncertainty in how long that will take you to complete. But if you do the non-thesis option, then if you do pursue, and the 4 is an upper bound, and since you're engineers, that's all I have to tell you, right? You could just take 2 if you wanted to, because we found that it is challenging. During your capstone with the 498A and B, in addition to taking 2 graduate level classes and some other undergraduate level technical electives, that's a heavy load. So you can't just assume this will be a cakewalk. But you might be able to reduce some of your master's coursework by taking 1 or 2. You don't have to take all 4. But up to 4 can be double counted. You could take 1 each of your final 2 semesters, and now you need 8 courses post-bachelor's. Did I confuse everyone? But you can double count 4 classes. You don't have to take all 4 if you're in the A&P. But if you can, then that really puts you ahead. Other questions? Did that answer your question? So we do offer 2 flavors of the master's, a non-thesis and a thesis. If you do pursue a thesis, then you would need to definitely have a faculty member that you're working with to do the research with. The non-thesis, you may be able to just sort of have a generic coursework faculty member identified, and you don't have to work on a day-to-day basis with a faculty member. Other questions on technical electives or the AMP? Yes. The question was, if you now are in the AMP, and I'm assuming that you're saying you've now completed your bachelor's degree, do you have to complete your master's in 1 year? And the answer is no. What are we going to do? So you could maybe even take a job and take our courses online. We do have a master's degree online, and maybe then your company pays for those courses. I hope I'm not misspeaking, but I think that's a good deal. You could now be in the AMP. You could now say, oh, I'm taking a job, and I'll take, but you do have 6 years to complete your master's. So you can't just string it out until you retire. You don't want to do that anyway. The whole point of getting your master's is to allow you to use that during your employable career. But no, you don't have to complete it in the 1 calendar year, your coursework for the master's degree. And if you pursue the thesis option, yes, you have more time than 1 year to complete your master's. Other questions? Yes. No. So the question was 340A and 372A. Right now, we've been teaching them both semesters. Those are junior level courses. We've tried to be somewhat, so here's the logic behind that. If it's in both options, we try to keep them on both semesters. We've tried to maybe not allow or teach 381A both semesters, so it may only be taught in the fall. 369A may only be taught in the fall because that's only required of a computer engineering option. But 340A and 372A, those are required of both options, and we are planning to teach those both semesters. But no, you do need to make sure you're planning ahead and you're effective with your planning and sequencing of courses. So it is important to know. Yes. No, the question was, is a master's thesis option required to pursue a PhD? Typically, the non-thesis master's is thought of more as a industrial master's, meaning you're not going to pursue the PhD, but what's to stop you? Now maybe you've really gotten excited about some material. I don't think we're going to hold that against you, that you now have these courses and maybe not a thesis. The thesis will help prepare you for writing a dissertation and doing the research at the PhD level, but you're not unable to do that without a master's thesis. And you could obviously go somewhere else in addition to the U of A. We don't have a monopoly on graduate education. Yes? So the question from the audience concerns, what if we do the AMP, start the AMP? You're not completing it. I'm assuming it's not being completed here at the U of A. You take some graduate level courses while you're an undergraduate student. I think another institution will recognize those as undergraduate courses. You don't plan on transferring those to another institution at the graduate level. Those were taken towards your bachelor's degree. Once you've finished your bachelor's, if you stay here, you can use those to count towards your master's. But if you go somewhere else, you now have to start anew. You can't double dip our classes in their master's degree program. That's not how that's put together. That's only if you continue here. But you can continue here off-site by taking our online. And we have a pretty good off-site online program financially now, in terms of it will be rolled out next week or the next week as a pretty good program, I think, at the master's level online. Other questions? Did that answer the audience's question? If not, I don't want to keep you here. It's Tuesday. You've got homework to do, right? I probably have some work to do if I can get motivated to do it. You guys don't have that option. Thank you. I hope this was helpful.